A quick review is to determine if x equals 2 is a solution of the equation. All you do is you go wherever x is and you plug in 2. So I'm going to plug in a 2 where x is on each side where I see an x. Now I type in my calculator or do in my head 6 times 2 plus 1. That's 13. 7 times 2 minus 1 is 13. Both sides are equal, so x equals 2 is a solution. Now we're going to work on solving multiple step equations. I have instructions written on the right-hand side that show the order of steps you should always do when solving. Go ahead and write those in your notes now. Okay, so when we do this, a tip for success if you're struggling is to go ahead and draw a line going down through the equal sign. This way you remember what you do to one side of the equal sign, you must do to the other. Another tip is you can highlight the variable, knowing that that variable is what you're trying to get by itself. So when we see this, we have the distributive property is our first thing we should tackle. But when we know to distribute is when there's a set of parentheses. In this case, there are no parentheses, so we don't need to distribute. Combining like terms is when you have something that both have the same variable, or both are numbers that don't have variables at all. We only have one x, so there's no combining like terms. So now we're going to add or subtract. So we have 2.5 times x minus 13. So we want to move the subtraction first. So the inverse of subtraction is addition, so we're going to add 13 to both sides. That leaves us with 2.5x equals, and 2 plus 13 is 15. So now we've done all the addition and subtraction we can do. We are next going to multiply or divide. We have 2.5 times x, so we're going to divide by 2.5. That's the inverse of multiplication. So we end up with x equals 6. All right, let's look at example 2. We don't have any parentheses, so we don't need to do any of the distributive property. Combining like terms we can do. Right here we have 9x minus 6. They both have an x, so they are like terms. So I'm going to keep the negative 12. 9x minus 6x is 3x. And then I still have plus 15. So now, once again, if you need to, go ahead and help you. You can highlight your variable knowing that is what you're trying to solve for. And then if you need to, you can also draw your line down your equal sign, knowing that what we do to one side of the equation, we must do to the other. That is when we're adding or subtracting, or multiplying or dividing. So to get x by itself, we first want to add or subtract. So we have adding 15, so we'll subtract 15. Using the subtraction property of equality, that gets us negative 27 equals 3x, because 15 minus 15 is 0. Now we'll divide by 3, and that will leave us with negative 9 equals x, which is our solution. So what are we doing when we do 9x minus 6x? What is that process called? As we talked about earlier, 9x minus 6x is called combining like terms. Let's look at one more example with multiple steps. In this case, we have parentheses. So now this is where the distributive property comes into play. The distributive property is just multiplying through everything in the parentheses. So we're going to do 2 times 1, which is 2, and 2 times negative x, which is negative 2x. We still have plus 3 and equals negative 8. So now let's see if there are anything that we can combine that are like terms. So if you notice, we have both a 2 and a plus 3 on the same side of the equal sign. So we can go ahead and combine those because neither has a variable. So we still have negative 2x, but 2 plus 3 is 5. And we still have equals negative 8. So remember, distributing and combining like terms are something that happens on one side of the equal sign. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing are things that happen on both sides of the equal sign. So now to get the x by itself, we want to add or subtract first. We have plus 5, so the inverse of addition is subtraction. So we'll subtract 5 from both sides of the equal sign, leaving negative 2x. Negative 8 minus 5 is negative 13. Now we have negative 2 times x. The inverse of multiplying is dividing. So we'll divide by negative 2. And we get x equals positive 6.5. So when you have a larger equation that you're trying to solve, what is the first thing that you do? Is it distributive property, combine like terms, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? We always look for distributive property first, and how we know we may need to distribute is if there are parentheses involved.